Hey buddy, you back? Back for part 2? Oh, he's already heading off to the studio. So today we are learning how to paint any breed of dog. So grab your paints and let's get started. So we got your paintings from yesterday. We're going to now, your drawings from yesterday. We're going to now do some painting, that's right. So we need lots of different kind of earthy, warm tones, brown tones, all that kind of thing, but what we really need is something that can give us the impression of a white fur. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just mixing up a sort of pale creamy shadow mix, experimenting with buff titanium, which is this creamy colour here, and a bit of Moonglow, a bit of Paynes Grey, and at the moment it looks very strong and dark, but the more water you add to something like this, the more it's going to be quite good for, there we go, for white fur. So we're going to begin with this collie, and we're going to paint in quite a sort of scribbly loose way today. So I've got my size 4 brush and I'm just getting some nice white elements onto this dog. You could always just use unpainted space, and there's certainly a bit of unpainted space that's going to feature here, but what we also want is to be able to get a bit of texture in the white, and that's why you use a pale colour, dilute colour like this, to really capture the texture of the white. Now, in contrast to that, we want to have the black of the fur, but again, black fur never just requires a pure black paint, because it's going to hit the light, it's going to be lighter and darker. There also might be warmer tones in there, so if I get a bit of burnt sienna as well, just in the mix here. So I've got Paynes Grey, Ivory Black and burnt sienna, and we're going to have a little bit of a sort of bleed in to some of the white. The key thing is to be remembering those contours of the body when we were drawing in yesterday. So I'm sort of placing in tufts of paint, but you can see I've sort of left that shape there, and I'm going to leave it just coming down here. There we go. And now I'm going to come in with just some water to just create that sort of roundness on the leg there. And I can build up the colour around it. In the same way that I can build up the colours that I've already painted in. So we're starting light, even with our sort of black tones. And then over up on the head, following the contours, remembering the eye we've got in there, giving that a bit of room. And of course, you know, your pet that you're painting will have you're colouring in a different place, but on the whole, the premise of starting with slightly more dilute colours and building them up works for every dog or shape or whatever it is you're painting. Okay, so we let that layer dry and we will come back to that and add some more once it's dry. The other thing, once your painting is dry and you're adding the next layer, is to intensify your colours. So I did have burnt sienna, Paynes Grey and Ivory Black in here. Now what I've done is I've upped the amount of Paynes Grey into the black because it's such an intensely dark colour. It's almost more intense than black. So when I add it in to this collie, we get an even more vibrant colour. And it can act as your bit of shadow and in the ear there. You can sort of work under the eye, or if you need to get a bit more sort of contour to the face. Obviously watercolours do dry lighter, so what we're drawing here is, you know, quite a bit darker, but these things do blend in. And then for the nose, we can just sort of bring in that colour on the bottom edge, and the little dots for whiskers. A lot of people don't realise that dogs actually have whiskers. And what I'm going to do is at the very end, with all of the dogs, once I've painted them, we'll just have a little look at the eyes and the last details that work for every dog. So let's move on, she says, because she just can't help herself. Let's move on to our boxer, shall we? So we'll begin with a nice bit of this sort of pale colour here. Let's just change my water over. It's quite blue, my water. Here we go. And so again, I'm just using the contours of the face that I've already drawn to give me help with the colours I'm going to do. So we're going to have a little white chest, white sort of up the middle, and then I think what might be quite nice is doing a sort of warm brown colour. So I'll get a bit of burnt sienna and yellow ochre mixed in together. I think that's a really, really nice colour for our pup. Because he's a smooth-haired dog, then the way we paint will be much smoother. But he is a wrinkly dog. The skin, you know, bundles and sags and things. So that's one of the things we'll be taking into account when painting it in. So as you can see here, we're just leaving a few little bits of unpainted space. And on the face, oh, he looks so sad, but he's not. It's just his face, but he does look a bit sad. Okay, so now I'm going to build up the colour I'm just going to make it a little bit shadowier. So we've got some burnt sienna in with that shadowy mix we had from previously, and it's a little bit wet, so it's getting a nice blend there. And we're still sort of working quite loosely. That can be rather good. And we can let that dry. I'll just pop in a little nose there. And also just a little bit of shade under the nose. So we'll let that dry and go on to the next detail. I'm now going to take the size 0 brush and some of this darker tone, and I'm going to start to use it in the sort of in the folds, in the creases, in the sort of underside of the ears as well. And again, we'll focus on the eyes at the very end. Oh, just got my hand in the paint. Not to worry. So it clearly wasn't that dry. That's the beauty of watercolour though, is it just sort of, it's rather forgiving. Now, with the feet, he's got these slightly more pronounced sort of almost claw-like paws, so they're a bit more defined than the collie. And we can use it quite diluted, like a shadow as well. So when we get to the end, we'll be adding little claws onto those. Now, Crumble, we all know Crumble. He is a tufty chocolate labradoodle. So a lot of his painting, and I have painted him before on the channel, is just all about texture. And so he's quite simple to paint. But you can see it's just a case of giving him different colours within those brown tones. So I'm doing all of this with a size 0 brush, really just allowing the texture to build the body. So you can see Crumble's just very scruffy and tufty. And again, we will be adding some final details to him at the end. Now for Lola, she is a blonde, I think she's called like a peach Lakeland Terrier. So the colour I'm using on her is a mixture of buff titanium, yellow ochre and cadmium yellow. But in a slight difference to Crumble's tuftiness, I'm doing it a little bit more delicately. I'm sort of curling the brush and making a nice sort of woolly texture. So she's a bit curlier than Crumble, and this would be good for a poodle as well, this kind of approach. And she's got these very beady eyes and a little black nose, so that'll be the thing that can sort of stand out for her. But her paws, you don't really see much in terms of claws or anything, because she's all just hidden over by the fur. Now if she was, because she gets groomed, so her hair gets trimmed quite regularly, there is a style, the Kennel Club style, if she was being a show dog or anything, where she'd have a much tighter clipped body and fuzzier, fluffier legs and a big fluffy face. But we don't do that with Lola because she's not in the business of being shown. But yeah, she's a pretty smart dog, no matter. So again, you can just see making the most of sort of defining the contours by just putting a bit more colour down the legs, down the hips and things. And then for her face, so do the ears a bit more smoothly. But then the face can be pretty much the same as the body. And we'll give her a black nose and eyes, just give her ears just a little bit more colour with some yellow ochre. For Carla, the husky up here, I mixed up the same pale creamy white fur colour. I've just sort of added it on here and there. Still there's white unpainted space as well. And for her, she was a sort of caramel coloured brown husky, so I'll just use a mixture of burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow ochre. But it was very much sort of flecked into the white fur. So I'm just putting a little bit on, then cleaning off the brush, because you don't need much because she was quite pale, and it sort of blended in really nicely. But the sort of direction of the colour is going to reflect that fur. And then sort of coming down around the neck. So I'm doing all this with my size 0 brush. So I've just got a little bit more colour, a bit more control. And that is, oh no, she had a bit of colour around her ears, around the tips of the ears, and a little bit coming down the face. And of course the pencil is quite heavy on it, but it's sort of, the pencil is part of the sketch with this piece, so while I will rub out a bit of pencil at the end, I'm going to be rubbing out less than what I would normally be rubbing out on my usual paintings. And then I'll just take a little bit of this of darker shadowy colour and just bring it in to get a bit more sort of light and shade on the white bits. As well as actually just a bit more of an edge to some of these little caramel tones, because that's dried now, so I can put that on quite nicely. Okay, so let's look at these last little details. So what I did just off camera is paint in some brown burnt sienna onto the eyes there of these ones. Lola just seems to have these black dots of eyes. So we'll get to her in a second, but let's go through them, shall we? So I've got this really lovely dark inky colour, which is a mixture of black, burnt sienna and Paynes Grey. And for our collie, I'm going to just do that little kind of top bit and a little bit of the makings of a circle. I'm also, just with my clean wet brush, just going to define that nose a little bit more, give it a bit of colour underneath, and then give his paws just a little bit more definition. Because they always have that sort of slight fuzzy tuft on the bottom of the paws there. So just clean wet brush, and then just a few last little sort of extra little hairs. But I'm happy with that. I think that looks really nice, and it's a nice sort of somewhere in between of a loose painting and something that's a bit more controlled, because we used the geometric shapes. Okay, for our lovely little bulldog down here, we're just going to give him, oh, he looks so sad. Let's make him, well, I don't know if I can make him a little bit happier, because they do just have this slightly melancholic look, but we'll give him just a little sort of lid on the top. I'm just using my black mix down here, and they are going to sort of have a little sort of upward turned look. So to be honest, just putting that in, that little sort of U shape, is enough, but you could just give it a little bit more like that, and then a little bit more of a droop. And then there's little rolls of skin, and then we were talking about claws, weren't we? So he does actually have these rather visible little claws just on the ends there. It's just helped define him that little bit more. If you want, you could just do a, you know, he is a smooth-haired doggy, but he could have a little bit more texture on him if you want. And you could just do that with the burnt sienna. So there he is. Now for Crumble, he has eyes rather like the collie, so not going to see a huge amount on both sides. But he also has a sort of, he's got a nose that is quite sort of flesh coloured in terms of his skin colour, which is a sort of pinky brown. So I didn't make a black nose, we just sort of coloured it in there. But what I do like to do when I'm painting Crumble is really emphasise the texture of him. So just with, if I take a slightly darker colour, you can bring out the ears there, you see, so I've just defined the ear. And then I just like to sort of give him an extra coat of texture. And then from that, the legs can sort of be defined just a little bit more. But he doesn't really need much more definition. In fact, his paws are really like covered in tufty hair. And his wonderful little beard. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on drawing Crumble, or if you also have a straight-haired Labradoodle like Crumble, then you can find his full tutorial on the illustration playlist, or you could just type dog into the search function of the channel and you'll find all our dog themed tutorials. We've painted quite a few dogs over in our time on the channel. Okay, so Lola, beady little eyes, Lakeland Terrier. So just take some black, and they're quite disapproving eyes. And then I'll use some stronger black for that, the nostrils there. And then we could always use just a little bit of the shadowy colour to just define her. When you have a dog that is very much one colour, it can be helpful to get a bit of shadow going on there. But remember, the texture of her means that every bit needs to be defined in that way. Okay, and Carla up here, we've got some black again. So going over the top and down a little bit, coming under, and then sort of filling it in and leaving a little bit of a unpainted space, just a little bit. And then we can fill in her nose, so she's had her nostrils. And she's got her tongue out, so we could paint that in. Nice little permanent rose. And then for her paws, she has some quite sort of elongated claws as well. I'm going to give her just a tiny bit more texture on the hair by just going over again with some small brush strokes on the brush. And there you have, now with the pencil all rubbed out, all the paintings finished. So I really hope that's been a helpful guide for showing you how you can use those basic shapes and basic techniques to draw and then paint any dog. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, you'll never miss another video, so that's brilliant. And of course, we'll see you again next time. Have a lovely weekend. Bye!